Hello everyone, welcome back. To the previous few videos, we have been looking at the major offices or authorities that come under the Union Executive. We started with the President, then we moved on to the Vice President, then Prime Minister. Yesterday we saw Council of Ministers, and today we will be doing the last under the Union Executive, the last in hierarchy, which is the bureaucracy. You know, bureaucracy is actually, the permanent wing of the executive. We had seen that executive will be temporary executive. Executive has two components: the temporary executive, which is the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister, because they are temporary because they get replaced every 5 years, or sometimes even before 5 years. And individual ministers are mostly, the ministries are shuffled, and sometimes they are replaced. A totally new minister takes charge, so their term is not fixed or permanent. Whereas you have the permanent executive, which is the bureaucracy. Now they are permanent in nature because they are recruited after open exams, and then they are trained, and then they are take up the office for a fixed period of time. So let's move on to the bureaucracy. So bureaucracy is a system of administration in which a professional class of expert civil servants administer the affairs of state in an impartial way. So basically, all our government servants are part of the bureaucracy. And bureaucracy is a system of administration where professional civil servants, they are professional because they are trained after recruitment, and they administer the affairs of the state in a very impartial way. This system is called bureaucracy. Now, let's take up the types of bureaucracy. First is guardian bureaucracy, in which the civil servants are considered the guardians of the justice and welfare system of the state. We do not have it in India. The second is caste bureaucracy, and this, as the term implies, is related to caste. So here, the persons belonging only those persons who belong to the upper class or upper caste, they get to be part of the bureaucracy, and that's called caste bureaucracy. And next is patronage bureaucracy, or the spoils system. So in patronage, under this patronage bureaucracy, civil servants are recruited based on their personal favors or political affiliations. So if you're close to a political party, then if the party is in power, or if they are influential, if the party is influential enough, then you get to be part of the bureaucracy. And luckily, we do not have this. This is also called spoils system, and we do not have it in India. And the fourth one is merit bureaucracy, and this is the most widely prevalent form of bureaucracy that we have, and we have it in India as well. And here, civil servants are recruited based on their merit. So basically, you have an open, exam which is open to all, and whoever whoever wins the exam, they get to be part of the bureaucracy, and they are selected and appointed based only on the basis of merit. So that is called merit bureaucracy, and that is what we have in India. Now, when we talk about bureaucracy in India, what comes to our mind is the civil services, the most prestigious and the most sought after, I must say, is the civil services. So, civil services, under civil services, we will see All India services, central services, and state services. So, let's first look at the civil services in India in general. You call civil servants by various names. You call them government servants, you call them public servants, so you call them bureaucrats. So civil services form the backbone of the administrative structure of the entire nation. Because without civil servants, the administrative machinery will not function. Because whatever laws are framed by the legislature, that has to be implemented by this bureaucracy. So they have a very important role in um, implementing these policies. These policies are rather the will of the state. So the civil servants are backbone of the administrative system because they are crucial in implementing the will of the state. Will of the state is also the public policy or the policies of the state. Now, as you know, they are a body of qualified, professional, full-time officials. They are trained, professional, full-time officials, and they are permanent. And so that body is called the civil service, the civil servants rather. Now let's look at the various characteristics of civil services. Number one, as I just told, they are skilled, trained, and professional. Now, most of the civil services are skilled, trained, and professional services, and they are regarded as professional advisors to those who formulate the state policy. You know that the legislatures, uh, the legislature, which is the lawmaking body, you have your MLAs and MPs who sit together, come together, and form or frame the laws for the state. Now, they are not experts on subjects, and civil servants always play the role of advisors to our uh, legislatures. So that's why I said they are skilled, trained, and professional. Next is they have a stable service and a permanent tenure. You know, they are permanent tenure because unless otherwise they have a term till their retirement, and their service is stable. Unless otherwise, I said, because sometimes you might have seen or heard of instances where government servants are punished or dismissed or suspended. Now, but generally they have a permanent tenure and a stable service because they are recruited after a competitive exam, and then they're trained to be part of the administrative system, and so they continue till they retire. Next is that the recruitment and promotions to civil services are based on merit, and they're recruited after a competitive exam. So merit is a deciding factor. Next is they are hierarchically organized. You know that if you go to any normal government office, not everybody there are equal. You have a hierarchy. So throughout the entire administrative system in India, we follow a hierarchy. So from the highest to the lowest, the positions are fixed. So their salary, status, everything is fixed, and that varies with their rank or the hierarchy. Next is public accountability. They are accountable to the government, or to the public rather. So next is anonymity and impartiality. We expect our civil servants, our government servants, public servants to be impartial and anonymity and maintain anonymity. So they're supposed to treat everybody they meet equally. They're not supposed to make distinctions. Next is political neutrality, very, very important, because every 5 years, in usual circumstances, you have a different party coming to power. So you expect the civil servants to be politically impartial or politically neutral, so that they don't change their allegiance, and they don't favor various parties. So you expect them to be responsible and committed to the work they do based on the rules and regulations only, and not out of other political considerations. Next is that you expect them to be fair, and you expect them not to favor someone. You expect them to be very fair and impartial. So, this is all about the civil services, the general features of civil services in India. And then, of course, yes, civil services are considered to be of a high prestige and status. These are the general features of civil services in India. Now, coming to the classification of civil services, you know, the All India Service, which is the top in the hierarchy. Then you have the Central Civil Service and the State Civil Service. So we have been following largely the British system of administration, because even our Union Public Service Commission and the State Public Service Commissions, they were here, they were functional even before independence. The Britishers had left a system of administration and we were mostly following it. So states also have got their own administrative system in place. And okay, yeah, and a few more features to add to the features of Indian civil services is that I told you that they are recruited after a after a competitive exam. And interestingly, we train and recruit and train them at a very young age, so that you get their service and experience till later in life. And of all these services, the most sought after or the most prestigious or glorious or whatever you call is the Indian Administrative Service, the IAS. So the the very best ones get to the IAS. So their salary and everything, status, everything depends on the office that they hold. Now let's take up the first of the civil services, which is the All India Service. I told you, mentioned three services: All India Service, Central Service, and State Services. Now the three are different. See, All India Services and Central Services, though they sound very similar, they are not similar. They're totally different. To take up the first, All India Services. And now, what is striking about All India Services is that they are common to both the central and the state governments. I said they're common to central and state governments because they serve the state and the center. They're recruited by the center, and they serve the state for most of the time, but at times on deputation they serve the center as well. Now, see, Article 312 of the Constitution talks about the creation of All India Services. So we have three All India Services at present: the Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Service (IPS), and Indian Forest Service (IFS). It's not IFS, is not Foreign Service here. What I meant is Indian Forest Service, which comes under the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Now I told you IAS is the most sought after or the highly prestigious one out of the three All India Services. IAS is under the Ministry of Personnel, and IFS, Indian Forest Service, is under the Ministry of Environment and Forest, and IPS, Indian Police Service, is under the Ministry of Home. Now, why do we need All India Services? Number one, they provide administrative services to both the center and the state. The second reason is that they serve as a link between the administrative affairs of the center and the union. They serve as a link because they are recruited by the center, they are trained by the center, and they are sent to different states, cadres you call. They are sent to different states based on their preference and choice, and they are paid by the states. So they are recruited and trained by the center, and they are paid by the state, they serve the state. So this system of centrally recruiting and training a group of people, all India service people, to serve states and at times the center also, but mostly the states. This creates a uniform system of administration throughout the country. States are free to have their own civil servants and administrative services separately, but at the top levels you have a centrally trained, a uniformly trained, uniformly recruited people uh, serving the state. So this gives a sort of uniformity, and this is the reason why you have a lot of people from outside Kerala serving the states. You might have noticed the names of our collectors and IPS officers, that a lot of them are not from Kerala. But they all have the same status, same powers. They're all centrally recruited and trained. And um, the third reason why we need an all India service is that it provides stability and uniformity of administration, as I just mentioned. And next is it ensures political neutrality in the administrative services. It ensures political neutrality. Political neutrality because they are, they belong to different states. They have been trained in various parts of the country, but they come and serve in other states. So they more or less you expect them to be politically neutral. And very important, at the time of state emergency or president's rule, which we have already learned about, which is under Article 356, all India servants or all India service personnel, they are necessary to implement the administrative decisions of the president. You know, when a president's rule is in place, you have the president ruling the state, or so you have to have someone who will administer on behalf of the president. So mostly it's the governor plus the people belonging to the all India services who render the service. Next is that they help maintain a very high standard of competency and efficiency. And finally, in a federal country like India, they help to formulate and implement national development plans and policies. Since they are trained and recruited by the center, they are instrumental in implementing the center's policies and decisions in the states. So, in a federal structure, they act or they connect the center and the states. So, this is very important. Now, coming to features of All India services. Number one, as I just told, they are common to both the center and the state. They have common qualifications, they compete in the same exam, they are centrally trained, and they serve both the center and the states, mostly the states, but at times on deputation, they serve the center as well. And once the deputation period is over, they come back and serve the states. Next is they act as instrument of national integration, unity, and development, because you have people from various parts of the country serving in different states. So this helps create a feeling of national integration. This helps promote national development. And next is very, very important. Rajya Sabha can create new All India services. So which is the authority that can create new All India services? It's the Rajya Sabha. So Rajya Sabha can pass a resolution to this effect with a 2/3 majority. And so Rajya Sabha has the power to create new All India services. But anyway, we right now have only, or since beginning we have been having only 3 All India services. So initially we had IAS and IPS, and later on we added Indian Forest Service in 1963. And the next feature of All India services is that they are controlled by both the center and the state governments. They are recruited and trained by the center, but they are controlled by both the center and the states. Now, the immediate control over these All India service personnel is with the states, but the ultimate control is with the center. So this also gives them a sort of freedom in decision making and performing their roles very well, because they know that their ultimate control is not with the state government but rather with the center, which recruited and trained these All India service personnel. So next is the central services. In the case of All India services, we saw that they were recruited and trained by one body, whereas they serve for the most part a separate body. But in the case of central services, as the name indicates, they are meant for the center. They serve the center, they are recruited by the center. So all their affairs are with the center, nothing to do with the states. So they serve only the union government and they enjoy administrative powers over those subjects which are in the union list. You know that we have three lists: the union list, state list and the concurrent list. So over those subjects in the union list, which means those subjects on which the center has the lawmaking power, over those subjects the central service personnel have power. So they have administrative power over those subjects. Examples are Indian Foreign Service, not Indian Forest Service. See, mostly we confuse between this term. IFS, Indian Forest Service, is an all India service, whereas IFS, the Indian Foreign Service, your ambassadors and diplomats, they come under the central service. Now, examples for central services are Indian Foreign Service, Indian Postal Service, Indian Economic Service, and Revenue Service, Railway Service, etc. Now, the Parliament can regulate their recruitment and service conditions of the central service personnel. So, the ministry in charge of the central services is the Ministry of Personnel, which control and manage these departments. Now, the central services are classified into four categories: central services category A, central services category B, category C, category D. So this is hierarchically organized as in any other administrative system. So basically central services group A and B are mostly the high ranking gazetted officers, whereas the central services C and D, category C or group C and group D, they are mostly non-gazetted officers who are relatively lower placed in the hierarchy. Then coming to the state public service. So Article 309 of the Constitution empowers the states to create their own services. In Kerala also we recently had the Kerala Administrative Service. So where the state can recruit, the state itself can provide them training, and they will be serving the states through their entire career. They need not be serving the center. So this is all about the state services, central services and all India services. So in the next class, we will be discussing the Union Public Service Commission, State Public Service Commission and the Joint Public Service Commission. So thank you all. Bye.